Another Canadian perspective now. Fen Hampson is the Director of Global Security and Politics at the Centre for International Governance and Innovation in Waterloo, Ontario. However, we reached him this week in London, England. Given the political backdrop for both the NATO and the G7 summits and Trump's unpredictability, what should Canada's approach be?
Canada is in the enviable position of having a prime minister who has already attended a number of summits. This is Donald Trump's first summit. Our prime minister, Alison, has also met with President Trump. He knows him. He's got a sense of him. So I think Canada, in some ways, if the conversation around the summit table, either at NATO or at G7, gets difficult, Canada can play its sort of classic intermediary role, in part because we know Mr. Trump, we know the Americans, we also have obviously good relations with our European and Pacific colleagues who are attending these meetings.
One of the key issues for Trump at NATO is how much other countries contribute in terms of defense spending. And Canada is one of those that doesn't, at this point, contribute the agreed upon 2% of GDP. It's also postponed the release of its own defense review. How much pressure do you think Canada is going to face compared to other countries?
Well, I think it's fair to say that we've already had a series of meetings between our foreign minister, our defense minister, their counterparts in Washington just a few days ago, as a matter of fact. So that message, I dare say, has already been delivered. I think President Trump will be directing, much of that conversation towards the Europeans, because, quite frankly, he made it quite a bone of contention in the presidential campaign that the Europeans weren't doing enough when it came to defense spending, that they were free riding on the American taxpayer. So I think he very much has them in their sights. We've in some ways punted the issue by saying that our defense review is going to come out after the summit. I think that's probably pretty prudent. If you've got a 2-ton truck bearing down on you, the best thing you can do is to swerve and get out of the way.
The other issue that the Americans are bringing is their coalition against ISIS. The idea that even though the members of NATO individually may be part of that coalition, that NATO should perhaps take on a more formal role, should step up in some way. What do you think about that?
I think that's going to be pretty contentious among the NATO partners. I dare say they're going to have a conversation around it. But one thing's clear, there's going to be no declaration coming out of this summit. They've already said that there's going to be no declaration coming out of this summit. Canada has been doing a fair amount of heavy lifting there. We've been training troops on the ground. And I don't think the Americans have, and I don't think Donald Trump in particular has a big issue with us, because we have been doing some of the heavy lifting on that particular mission, Alison.
Tell me what you're going to be watching for at both of these summits now.
Well, I think what everybody is watching for, Alison, is the interaction between a president who this is going to be his first exposure to summitry. He is somebody who doesn't have a long attention span. We know that. They've already tried to make this summit kid-proof, which is to say leaders, and we're talking about both summits, have been told not to make long statements or declarations because they're going to lose the interest of the American president. So I think, what everybody is watching is, will Donald Trump stay on script, the script that has been written by his policy advisors, or is he going to go off script? And, there's a real risk there. I mean, he's on the road for 9 days. These are grueling. And if you get tired, it's very easy, even for a very experienced and seasoned politician, to start saying things that they might later come to regret, although as we know with the president, he doesn't seem to regret what he says or what he tweets.
Given all of that, does that diminish the effectiveness or the significance of these kinds of meetings?
Well, the value of these meetings is that it's an opportunity for leaders to get to know each other. And, you know, when it comes to the G7 meeting that's going to be taking place in Italy, there are 4 leaders sitting around that table. This is their first summit for them. So this is, I think that summit is going to be very important. I mean, not just for Mr. Trump, but for Canada, for that matter. It's going to be clearly an opportunity for Prime Minister Trudeau to meet with his new European counterparts. And you know, there are going to be some tough issues that are going to be coming up at that meeting. I mean, one is, what is the American commitment to the Paris Accords on climate change? There's been a lot of discussion that the Americans, or fears, I should say, that the Americans are going to pull out of that. Trump has said that, you know, he's not going to make a decision until after the summit. So I suspect we and others will be weighing in heavily at that meeting to say, don't jump out of the Paris Accords. And, you know, that's some of the advice that the president has been getting from his own Secretary of State, who is quite clearly on the record as saying that this would be a very bad idea. So this is an opportunity for key allies of the United States to reinforce that message. I think when it comes to the NATO summit, Alison, you know, the real message there is that at this time of when the alliance is facing many challenges, not just in Europe from Russia, but also in the near abroad, as you might say, the challenges of ISIL in the Middle East. There's going to be a very intensive discussion around that table about the future of the mission in Afghanistan, where clearly the Americans want NATO partners to pony up and put more troops on the ground. That, again, there's some very serious subjects that are coming up for discussion. Will we see an agreement on those issues? Probably not, but at least the beginning of what we hope will be a serious conversation.
Thank you very much for your expertise on this.
My pleasure, Alison.